Hey everybody, it's David Sirota. So in the ongoing debate over Medicare for All, something interesting happened with the Republicans. Wyoming Senator John Barrasso sent a letter to the Congressional Budget Office asking for Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill to be scored. What he's asking for is he wants to know a price tag on the bill. Now that sounds fine, and that's legitimate in the sense of needing a debate about what things cost. But there's a couple things that are worth mentioning about this to really understand the dishonesty of what's being pursued here. First and foremost, the Republicans have notoriously tried to pass things without asking for the bills that they want passed, without asking for them to be scored. When it's a Republican priority, oftentimes these lawmakers just want to pass something without anybody asking how much does something cost, like how much does a war cost, or how much does a piece of the Pentagon budget cost. And oftentimes those rules about scoring are waived. So that's one point. And you can see that, by the way, most, I think, evidently in the way Congress has behaved, for instance, when it comes to bank bailouts. I mean, let's remember in 2008, bankers ran to Congress, ran to the federal government and said, we need basically an unlimited, never-ending, multi-trillion-dollar bailout. Because we basically cratered the entire U.S. and global economy. And the Federal Reserve, has effectively done that, just continued to create a multi-trillion-dollar bailout through quantitative easing, through all sorts of mechanisms. That's on top of the bailout that Congress itself passed. When those bailouts were asked for, you didn't see Congress, the Republicans saying, hey, we need a price tag on that, and we can't do it unless we get a Congressional Budget Office score. But it's true, two wrongs don't make a right. I think, that's an old argument. Well, they didn't want scores for what they wanted to do, and so that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be scores for current legislation. The two wrongs don't make a right. But here's where Barrasso's tactic really, really shows even more dishonesty. If you read his letter asking for a Congressional Budget Office score, it goes on and on about how he's worried that the Sanders bill is going to cost all this money, and he's very concerned about this. But you'll notice in his letter, he doesn't ask for the Congressional Budget Office to score Sanders' bill and then compare it to what the United States currently spends on health care. What this guy wants, and what the Republicans want in general, they want to be able to run out and scream some giant multi-trillion-dollar number that sounds unbelievably huge and completely unaffordable. It's going to cost $20 trillion or $25 trillion. Oh my God. What they don't want is that number contextualized. Because if you contextualize these numbers, oftentimes they don't seem as radical as a number in a vacuum may seem. Give you an example. Right now, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid in the federal government say that we are spending right now about $3.2 trillion a year on healthcare. That's all healthcare spending in the United States. It's more than 17% of GDP. $3.2 trillion. That means over the next 10 years, America is on track to spend at least $32 trillion on healthcare. That's assuming no increases in healthcare costs, so it's a very conservative estimate because there have been increases in healthcare costs. What Barrasso and the Republicans don't want, they don't want the Medicare for All bill, the price tag of that, compared to what we currently spend. Because if you actually compare it to what we currently spend, maybe the amount more spending won't be so big. Maybe we'd actually be spending less. For instance, Canada spends a lot less than the United States per capita on health care. And by the way, you saw this in California over the single-payer bill in California. The opponents of it kept running, it's going to cost $400 billion. $400 billion. We can't afford it. It's going to cost $400 billion. But let's not mention that the state currently spends upwards of $325, $350 billion already on health care. So they don't want the contextualizing number to offer any kind of comparison, because then the comparison doesn't look so bad. In fact, it may end up looking good. So if you read Senator Barrasso's letter, he's not saying, hey, CBO, can you compare what we're spending now on healthcare versus what we'd be spending, what each American would spend under a Medicare for All bill. He doesn't want that comparison because he and the Republican Party's healthcare and drug industry donors don't want a comparison that might make things actually look good for a Medicare for All proposal. It actually might make things look good for a Canadian-style healthcare system proposal. They don't want that contextualizing number because then the number may end up not looking so scary. Because if I ran out right now and says, oh my God, we're spending $32 trillion a year on healthcare, and granted, that is a lot. And one of the big problems in healthcare is that spending keeps going up and we haven't done anything to reduce spending. But if I went out and screamed $32 trillion, that's unaffordable. That's what we're spending right now. So watch in this debate for whether or not you are being provided numbers that are contextualized and compared to what we are spending now. Because a Medicare for All bill is really a question about a comparison. Do we want a Medicare for All system and its price tag, or do we want the current for-profit, private health insurance dominated system that it's going to cost at least $32 trillion over the next 10 years?